Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to go through the personnel section of a mishap report. Now, in the fictitious scenario that we've been building through this series of videos, we have a scenario where a soldier driving an Army-owned van struck a utility pole. So in the materials section of this motor vehicle mishap, we've already added the van as the motor vehicle, so now we have to add the soldier as the involved personnel. So we do that by clicking Add Personnel. Now, something we need to discuss before we go any further is that within the ASMIS 2 Mishap and Near-Miss Reporting tool, we've integrated with Defense Manpower Data Center, or DMDC for short. Now, DMDC is DoD's authoritative source for all personnel data. So in a nutshell, anyone with a CAT card has a record in DMDC regardless of personnel type. With that said, if we know the DoD ID, we can type that in here, and as we tab off, all this information will be populated. But since we don't know it, we're going to search by email. Though we could search by DoD ID or SSN and last name. So we click the email tab. We put in Jordan Peterson and we do a search. So once we've verified that the UIC is correct, we simply add him to the mishap, and his information now appears, which means we don't have to type it. The next task we have to accomplish is to indicate his role in the mishap, and that was direct and physical involvement. Now that we've done that, we have 5 additional tabs on the left that have appeared. And when we answer the fact that he did suffer an injury or occupational illness, we now have yet a 6th tab that we have to fill out. So at this point, we could click Save and Continue, but we'll take a shortcut here and just click directly to employment information. Now, the information in the previous tab is still saved, so you don't have to actually click Save and Continue for that to take place. So first, we'll pick his employment status. It's DoD, U.S. Army Military, Active Army. He was on duty, so we'll say on duty, non-TDY. His date of hire. His enlistment date, we'll say February the 10th. Flight status is not applicable. Pay grade, as enlisted, he's an E4. So we'll skip the unit personnel address information for now, and we'll click straight to injury and occupational illness. So the soldier was injured, and he did have days away from work. And now that we've made that selection, we have the injuries and occupational illnesses tab to appear. So at this point now, we select the injury and occupational illness cause, and it was struck by, against, or crushed, since he did strike his head against the windshield and the steering wheel. Having done that, we now have to add the specific injury. And we could do a search here, as we've done so far, but what we can do here is say concussion, because he did suffer a concussion. Body part is head, brain, skull. Pretty simple. So we just click Save, and so we now see his single injury displayed in the grid. From a treatment perspective, he was treated in an emergency room. Subsequently, he was hospitalized for 2 days and had 5 additional days of restricted duty. So in this quick little narrative, the object or substance that directly harmed steering wheel and windshield. So as we scroll down to the medical treatment facility information, if it is a military facility, we can simply search, and being on Fort Rucker was Lister Hospital. And Dr. Jones is the treating physician. Pretty straightforward. Next, we move on to drugs. Now, in this fictitious scenario, drugs were not suspected. However, if they had been, clicking yes would allow us to add drugs to the report. And we could even attach lab results if necessary. But we'll say no and move to alcohol. If alcohol use had been suspected, we'd be required to enter the blood alcohol content, and if we had lab results, we could attach them as well. But in this case, the answer is no. There were no night vision devices in use. There were no activity or fatigue factors, so we'll skip that for now. Now, personal protective equipment will be a point of issue in this mishap because the soldier was not wearing his seatbelt. So to answer this question, we will click yes, and we will add the relevant PPE. And we'll go straight to seatbelt. Was the appropriate PPE worn? No. Was it available? Yes. Why was it not worn? So we'll just put in a sample reason for that. This could be anything as long as it's valid. And so now we have our PPE item in play. So finally, the training tab. So training is a very important aspect of mishap reporting. And in this specific example, the soldier was merely driving a van, so we're going to say this is not applicable. Now, what is applicable is the question of whether or not he was licensed or certified to operate. And the answer in this case was yes, he had a driver's license. So when we answer yes to any of these questions, we have to specify the date on which he received that certification. So in this case, what date did he receive his driver's license? So in this case, we'll say not applicable to the remaining questions. Were there any additional state or federal licenses required? No. Was he part of a qualified crew? No. So at this point, we're done with the personnel information. And we return back to the personnel listing page with the grid showing all the applicable information we've just entered. In the next video, we will learn how to associate personnel and material.